one thing they point out is your style, your ability to speak so slowly, yet get through all of the material. And I personally am a witness of this. I used to hate to see you whip because it does seem.
So I feel I could have done it better, and I should have done it better. But I mean, it is what it is. But for those who are still in the positions where they can make things better, I think they really need to do what they have to do. I've worked in rural areas where I've had to train people in, entrepreneurship, how to start businesses, how to do marketing, how to do stuff like that. And they didn't have to train me to do those things. They just need to give me the material and for me to know this is what we have to do. And I'm able to, engage huge crowds, different kinds of people, all kinds of ages, really old markets women, some illiterate, then young people, people in vocational schools across board.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Shaft podcast, your favorite debate conversation show. And once again, we're back with our interviews. Today is one of the more exciting days. I speak to a brother of mine. I think majority of people within the community have heard a lot about him, but I've not seen him in recent times. So we are very, very happy to bring him back to the fray and would be asking him some very, very exciting questions, telling us what he's been up to, also tell us some of his awesome stories within debate and to share some of his top tips with us. I'll not spend too much time with introduction because we'll be delving so much into his bio. I would like to welcome my brother and friend, Joseph Mireku, also popularly known as Tintin. Tintin, how are you doing?
Great, great, great. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's been a very, very long time. What have you been to? How are you holding up?
Yeah, it's been a very long time, and I've been doing quite a number of things, working largely, and
Yeah,
a bit of politics here and there. But it's been very eventful few years.
yeah. I think the last time that you were in any debate tournament was should be about 3 years, or is it 4 years now? I think the last time was in either 2020 or 2021, if I try to
Yes,
remember.
I think I was in the finals with you then. It probably would have been uh, Genesis or Accra Open.
Yeah, one of those. One of those. I mean, it
Yes,
just highlights
Genesis
that.
or yeah, Genesis or Accra Open.
Yeah, it just highlights how long it's been since we met each other. So, I mean, it's so great to have you on the show today. We'll just
Thank
be
you.
taking a look at your debating history, your debating life, how you got into it. Then we'll be having further discussions about some of the wonderful stories that you've had along your journey, and then we'll top it off with how you're finding life and the things that you're into right now. So let's get into the meat of things. When we talk about Tintin and you think about your legacy within debate, where do you think you stand in terms of how the sport should see you?
That's a very interesting question. And I don't think I can speak to legacy per se because I don't think I really did those things that would cement a sport from a legacy perspective. But I think one way or the other you cannot really relate the Ghana debate story without my name coming in one way or the other. It wouldn't be particularly for something I did, but I was either there when something happened or whoever is speaking may have done something that probably involved me, or I was the person had to be they had to beat in the final to probably get whatever record that they made. So one way or the other, my name will keep coming up in some kinds of conversations. But aside that, there's nothing that I did particularly, to sort of have a legacy or to have that kind of spot in a debate hall of fame or something. But I know once the conversation comes up, my name will come up definitely.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not too surprised. That's a very, very humble response because I'm sure by the time we are concluding this conversation, we're going to be talking about the impact that you certainly had on the game within the nation and then also within Africa as a whole. But you're right that a lot of times when we've had conversations with people, they do reference you, and one of the things that they speak about is you being the best whip in Africa. And one thing they point out is your style, your ability to speak so slowly, yet get through all of the material. And I personally am a witness of this. I used to hate to see you whip because it does seem that you take the slow way, but you eventually get to that stop. What would you say? Would you say this is true? Would you say this assessment is true? But what would you say was the key strength that you found with this? How were you able to do so, especially in a world where people were looking to say a lot of things really, really fast and get their points across?
Okay. Uh, I think the main thing was that there's a bit of a natural element to it, because I naturally speak slowly. So there's no practice in terms of that. I naturally speak slowly. And when I do or run a few public speaking workshops, what I always say is for people to play to their strengths. If naturally you speak very quickly and there's so much that you have to say, there's no need really changing that so much. So for me, naturally, I speak quite slowly. And so that was the one thing, speaking slowly, one. And then the number two thing, which was also very natural to me, is that I am, for lack of a better word, I have a combative mind, for lack of a better word. So sometimes it's difficult to agree with a thing just like that, because once you are saying the thing, in my mind I'm finding out what is wrong with this, why isn't this true, in what cases will this not work, what are the exceptions to this. So when you pick speaking slowly and then having that kind of combative questioning mind and you put them together, then it really puts you in a position where you are easily able to summarize the thing and to sort of highlight the things, the defects and stuff like that. So those two things were natural, but so I can understand how it could now come across as being some assets that are very good for someone who's like a web speaker, who's the last person or who's supposed to really conclude a debate. I can see how those things can be helpful, but from my perspective, those have been the two things: being a naturally slow speaker and then having a combative mind. And then when you add all the information and all the things you learn, then it really becomes something formidable.
Yeah, I think those two things are very, very interesting. Especially, and I like how you highlighted, especially in your role as a whip, where you're supposed to summarize the debates. Because I think coming up in debates, we did see people who had different styles, uh, but the way in which I think you were able to apply this for it to be so effective was just the pure wit with which you used to question things, attack things, to be able to create doubts around it. I personally thought it was one of the best ways I'd seen this being used, and we'll be going through some of the examples and some of the debates rounds in which you were in and your experiences in there. But I want us to start from the very start. Most people do have a nice story about how they got into debate. What's your story about how you found debate and why it worked so much for you?
That's an interesting one. And I always used to say, um, a lot of people start from high school, maybe JHS or high school, and then they do maybe this English thing. I mean, in your own story, you used to do very well with English and all that, and then that was how it started. But for me, the first time I tried out for debates was in high school. So they had this debates coming up, those one-off civic debates, and then it had to be
Yeah.
something about it was something about a resource curse, because Ghana had just recently discovered some large volumes of of crude oil, and we wanted to know whether that would be a good thing for us or it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be so beneficial. Many years later, I would come to learn about, I think they call it the Dash disease, things like that. But at that point, I didn't know what all those things were. So we went for this tryout, and the key thing they were looking for was the ability of a person to memorize a speech and then regurgitate the whole thing. So they wanted these fast talking, very loud, really very strong guys who could memorize the entire speech. I even remember parts of it now. There was something about oil being a black bituminous liquid, something you really had to chew the entire thing, you know. So that's what I had to do. And I really sucked at it. So in high school, I couldn't make the debate team because I really couldn't memorize the stuff and then go deliver the way they wanted to for a number of reasons. One, because a lot of the time I felt this wasn't relevant for what we had to do in the debate. So from the get go, it was difficult memorizing stuff I felt were not relevant. But secondly, also, I'm just not the kind of person. I want to reason through the things. So it was really difficult. So high school debate was entirely out. I spent my time with student leadership, being an MC sometimes, trying to rap, trying to kickstart a rap career and all that. Then I got to the university, and then it was really random. It was just some guy on my floor, I think, who introduced me to Patrick. Patrick. And then I think I probably joined the whole debate society or something. And then that was how it started. But the funny thing about the whole debate society was that we were supposed to have some inter-hall thing. I'm not too sure about the timeline of events, but there had to be
Yeah.
a Unity
Yeah.
Hall and
There,
Katanga.
yeah, there was, yeah,
Yes.
there was
I
an
think you were
inter-hall
part of
thing you
that.
did. Yeah, before there's a qualification to the
Yes.
larger society.
Yes. Yes. No, 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 not that. There was an actual inter-hall debate. And
Oh,
you
no, that's true.
remember that one?
It
You
was
remember
not.
there's
Yeah,
that one.
yeah, yeah.
Aha.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yes, yes. So, but the final never really happened because there was that Unity
Yes.
Hall and Katanga debates, that whole clash, the whole fight, and the final never happened. But really, I randomly got into debate at the university. I met somebody who felt, oh, you speak quite well. You seem to know a lot of things, and they know about this debate society where they speak a lot and they share a lot of things. So he thinks it will be a good place for me to be. And so he introduced me to Patrick, and then I started going for the meetings, and that's how I got into debates. But the one significant difference I saw was that with this style of debates, I didn't have to memorize any speech. And I really didn't have to have some sort of written down formula to get the point across. And of course, the style actually emphasized thinking on your feet, just 15 minutes to prepare and all those things. So I felt very much at home, and that's how come I really loved to debate so much because I felt it was what I wanted to do, as against the high school style of memorizing speeches and whatnot.
I mean, like, it's weird, but I remember that topic around the time we discovered, or I think it was one of those speeches I also wrote, and you're right that is it. I don't know if you do remember. There was this guy. I don't know if his name was Maxwell, who I think came from Prempeh College, and he was quite articulate.
Yes,
Because if you remember the
yes,
Conti set, because the Conti set eventually we had Delali Perez, we had Foster
yes,
Kugri. I think yourself,
yes.
your partner was Ken Midas. We had Telfa in the one guy Xavier, and some of these guys whom we've even forgotten. Alvin Autry, who is at
Yes,
YFM now,
so we met. Yes,
was
Alvin Autry
also
who knew
within.
the intro to the constitution, and he had memorized the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. So I mean, I really relate to your story around people who sort of have things structured, because it does seem like um our experience within Unity Hall filtered out the guys who were just good at memorizing and giving out stuff, from people who were just good at thinking on their feet. What would you say would be the key difference to this, especially if you look at British parliamentary style and the way in which we deliver debates? What would you say is the key difference as to why people who are so much focused on good delivery and being able to memorize things tend to struggle in this arena of debate?
Um, a few things that jump out to me are that in those kinds of environments where you need to memorize and deliver, as you said yourself, the emphasis is on different things. You see, the thing is that what you emphasize and focus on is eventually the kinds of outcomes that you're going to have. So if you create an environment that prioritizes rote memorization, flowery delivery, and some kinds of things, you are going to end up with those results. First, because it's going to attract those kinds of people in the first place. And then it's going to sort of hone those kinds of skills over time. So, I mean, that's what you are going to end up with, number one. But the second part of it also, it's also something I've noticed in the larger Ghanaian culture, even outside debates, the larger Ghanaian culture, where delivery is automatically equated with intelligence or the gravity of the point or whether it makes sense or not. So if you have that kind of culture that celebrates, delivery, and fast talking and things like that, automatically when people can't deliver as well as you would expect, they would automatically remove themselves from those kinds of spaces, right? So you have a situation where people who speak very well, deliver very well, are groomed all their lives to keep speaking, keep delivering well, and everything. Then all of a sudden, they come into an environment where the slow talking guy who says little is winning ahead of him, the guy saying everything with all the big words and everything. So at some point, I feel there could be a sort of a psychological thing where it's like, am I not good enough? Why can't I do it like I used to do it in high school? There's that. And then there's also the feeling that, well, these guys are really not rewarding my skills here because why are these people with their bad English scoring as much as me or even more than me? So I think all those little things end up creating this huge barrier such that they are unable to scale it and then it becomes a problem. Some I think do, because if you're able to understand how it works, then you can now get into it. But some unfortunately never do because they may not want to change. They've had 2 decades of being celebrated for their fast talk and their nice flowery language, and they can't make that switch in just a few years. So I think those are some of the challenges that people from that kind of school would have in a BP system. But noting those things, you would realize that if they're able to switch just a bit, they're able to do so well. Because all these times, before you and Andrew and the others sort of democratized world debates and making it something that is accessible that everybody can now aspire to go there. Prior to those times, all these guys you would see would be fast talking, information dumping, kinds of people, just saying so much and sounding like CNN broadcasters and all that. So I think there's really a lot of room for guys like that once they are ready to make the switch and if they can understand that this is how it works and they can just make the switch and they'll flourish as we've seen.
No, no, I think you make some really, really important points there, especially around the culture that we celebrate and how that interacts with like our politics and how we view people who are even intellectual in the first place. And and I think the last part that you touched on around the landscape of debate at that time, I think that's where I want to start moving my next frame of discussion because you still came into the debate space whilst it was still relatively young. And I think you had a chance to attend the nationals competition in 2014. But if my memory serves me correct, you were in the finals of that nationals competition, um, and it was your very first year within debate. How would you say you were able to make this quick transition to get to the top or the apex of Ghana debate, even as we were looking at it? And I want you to contrast this with the landscape of debate, especially at that point.
I think first of all there was the sort of the first mover advantage, right? Because we were really like the generation that sort of kick-started the thing. I mean, you had Patrick and all those guys, before, but I don't think at their point was really as vibrant as it was when we got in. So at that point, really, there were no giants. There were no Goliaths to kill, really. It was just like everybody was a David. It was literally like like a plateau for everybody. So in that kind of context, I think it's quite easy to shine because we are all learning and we are all just figuring out the whole thing as we go. So for me, that was what I noticed because when we got into the debate society, really there were really no names that would make you, there were really no
Yeah.
names
To
to
be fair, they
write.
had we had some debaters from the past PADC in Calabar, and people
Mm,
like people like Sack had gone to make a name. People like BNI. There
yeah,
were some guys, but I get what you mean in the sense that
I think
the
Patrick
gap wasn't.
Zion.
Yes, yeah, Patrick Zayan too. I get what you mean in
Yeah,
terms of the gap just not being too wide.
it really wasn't too right. It just felt like, oh, okay, these are the guys who've been doing the thing. But then you listen to them and you're like, no, I wouldn't say that. I think it could have been. The gap wasn't really that wide. Unlike now where you have like people in world open finals and all that, all mixed up in the scene. So at that time, I don't think the gap was that wide. So it was easier to get into the space. Number one, but from a personal point of view, also, I think I just sort of felt, oh, this was something I could do quite well, and so I really put myself, into it and dedicated a lot of time. I mean, I was treating it like exams coming up. Wake up 4 a.m. Read, watch some videos, read a lot. I mean, read a lot of things, news, material. Go online, find all this, and those times you had a lot of like bootleg information. Somebody creates this 17-page PDF with some things, principles. You find it, you download it, and you read it, that kind of thing. So there was a lot of preparation, but I think largely it was just because there were really no giants. So there was the strong belief that if you put yourself to it, then you could also do something. So I think that was really the overriding sentiment at that point. But I
Yeah.
think contrast with the landscape. Oh, you want to come in? Okay.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead. The landscape.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that was really what it was. You look at the landscape and it's all flat, really. I mean, it's all flat. So it feels like there's a lot that you can do. Unlike if I had probably come up in a system where you look at the landscape and you feel like there are so many things to do, there's so much you need to do to make a name. Perhaps the approach would have been different, but I'm sure I just would have probably worked harder.
That's probably true because I remember you formed a very formidable partnership with Belinda, if I'm correct, for that first tournament, and you guys went ahead to have stints in 2015 and I think even 2016, if I'm not mistaken. When you look back at that partnership and the things that you guys were able to do, because I do understand your point and I think it's interesting because no one has ever described it as a plateau. All right, so I think even if you do describe it in a way in which you do that the landscape in itself was flat, I think there were a lot of people who were competing to get to that mark, to get to be called giants, and you were one of those people who was always seen within the pack. So I just wanted to take a close look at your partnership with Belinda. First of all, I want you to speak a bit about her because I think she's one of those people who was also such a huge character within the space, and you guys were able to form such a formidable partnership, and also look at some of the giants you guys had to slay on the way, and some of the things that you guys were able to achieve along the way. What do you think made the partnership work so much, and how much work did you guys have to put into it navigating that plane?
Um, I mean, first of all, exactly. Belinda is one of those people we were speaking about earlier, because she came from a strong high school debate culture where, I mean, you know how Belinda speaks, silky smooth, articulation at 100%, one word rolling into the next one, intoning, excellent speaker. So she was coming from that really rich, strong high school debate where she had won many things. She was a girl's prefect, so you can sort of imagine, the kind of experience that she had in that setting. And so when she came, she carried along some of, those traits which at the very beginning were also very well received by the community. So that was like a major asset we had, because now when you go into a room, you could have, I mean, for those who were persuaded by those kinds of things, you had that to give. And for those who were persuaded by some other things, you had that balance to give as a team. But the other, I mean, I think even in the 2014 final, she probably had lost her voice by the finals. I think she had lost her voice by the finals because of, that style of speaking. Because I think in a high school debate, there's like just one debate and that's the end. But now you have nine prelims and quarters and this and that. So by the final, she had lost her voice. So she had, a lot of that thing. And then she was also a law student, so there, I mean, I don't think that the law, in as much as it's about, arguments and all that, in a competitive debate setting, I don't think that the kinds of reasoning that helps lawyers really helps in debate rooms. But for information purposes, and also for some concepts, and also for the philosophy of thinking about things, it was like a very great asset for us. So, I mean, when I say that, I mean, lawyers feel like the law is the law, da da da, this is what the law says, da da da. So, sometimes it's a sort of wall or barrier to their thinking. But in a debate room, also, if you sort of know how things happen, then you can also reason along them. Like when it comes to, those like debates about the criminal justice system, the whole actus reus, da 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 da. I mean,
Mm,
the thinking, it helps to think through, to know there's stuff like intent and there's things like consent, but some
yes.
consent really may not be enthusiastic. There's a whole coerced bit of it. There's informed consent. These are things she may have heard in a classroom or something, and they were very useful. So she had that too. The legal training also helped us in thinking about things, like the philosophy behind things. It was really helpful. Sometimes she would bring in some concepts from their class, maybe around thoughts, damage, things like that, and then we would repurpose that information to, to a different end. So that was also very, very good. So those were the things that I think she brought to the table: her style, and also a lot of information, legal information that we could use in a lot of contexts. Even you would even have some international policy motions, and she would still know some things about the ICJ and things like that. So it was very good, but there was a significant gap in our styles. So sometimes that would also have its own challenges, because I see something a certain way and she doesn't see it that way. And she thinks, how do you argue this kind of thing? Because it's totally opposed to how she sees things. And so there were a few of those things here and there, but we could always work through those. But it really was a lot of learning. It really was a lot of learning. We weren't learning together, but it was really a lot of learning, because we would find topics to learn about, to discuss, things like that. And we had a really long partnership too. So it wasn't
Mm,
like the one time tournament, like it persisted for a long time. So with time, you get to know, strengths, weaknesses. So it became a stronger partnership with time. But at the same time, that also robbed us of some variety, because you know how the debate um, ecosystem works, or the debate community works. Sometimes the more people you interact with, the more you can learn new things, get some insights into the kind of resources they use, because they will have to open up those resources to you when you're a team, So, I mean, and also the thing about, like, I can't find the right word for it, but just like people just knowing you and knowing the stuff that you have and all that is also like a really valuable thing in debate, because it's down to persuasion. And if somebody isn't persuaded by your persona from the get-go, it's quite difficult getting to persuade them in the long run. So I felt that was something that we also didn't enjoy, because we were so stuck together. If perhaps we had explored more, interacted with more people, debated with different kinds of people, we would have had the variety of experiences as well.
Yeah, I mean it's quite interesting because like when you think about partnerships within that era, it was mostly decided by the people around you, like yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of your element and then your opinion, but it was mostly decided by the people around you and how much they thought you work well together. And so, if you happen to find the right person that it works with, you are tempted to sort of go all the way. So if I remember correctly, in 2014, um, Ghana Nationals, you guys were in the finals. In 2015, you were in the finals, and I think in 2016 also you were in the finals. And in all of these ones, you still had not clinched the ultimate. At that point, what's your thought process? What was your assessment of what was going on? What did you think was missing in order for you to get there? And could you do so by describing all those finals and necessarily what was happening in there?
Um, this is tough because I don't really remember specifics of these things, but the overwhelming feeling was a feeling of disappointment, really. Especially in 2015, I felt we absolutely had to win.
Yeah,
Again,
right.
I can't remember the exact specifics now. I can't remember the specific arguments and stuff like that. But I remember at the time my um, strong feeling was that we had to win because of how things had progressed in the debate. But it was really disappointing because I felt we had everything. But for myself too, I also blamed myself for all the losses, because I felt, I mean, that's I always look at things from the perspective of what could I have done different. So a lot of the debates I remember what could have gone better such that we would have won. So, but what I really remember was 2015, which I absolutely believe we should
Yeah,
have. Also, because I won the public speaking thing in
yeah,
2015. So I thought, I mean, that would have been an amazing thing to do, to win both the public speaking and the debates thing at the same time. But that's really the one that I remember. But really, all overall, it was really disappointing and it was frustrating too, because we felt we were putting in so much work and we weren't really getting the kinds of things that we had to get. But aside that and beyond that, there's a way in which that could probably have made us stop or quit, as some people did. Some people come in one year, they lose, and then they go. But for me, it was always a thing about debate was much more than the medals, much more than the trophies, much more than the glory, so to speak. For me, it was just a sport. Like, I mean, it's a thing to do, right? If I'm not debating, what else would I be doing with my time? So it really gave me the motivation to just keep going, learn more, see what else we could change, and to make things better. But I think collectively we felt, there's a soft side of debates. There's a soft side to it beyond the hard skills. There's a soft side to it, which we felt we hadn't really been exploring. So I think we put it down to that we probably weren't exploring the soft side of debate well enough.
yeah. I think. debate partnerships mature, in my opinion. I think they go through the life cycle, like that bell shaped life cycle, where there's a point at which you're at your peak. And I think your peak was in 2015, because I do remember, and many people do speak about that quarterfinal speech, which was, I'm not sure you'd even remember what that speech was made up of, and which maybe points to what debating is for most of us. Like, we just remember the feeling. We don't even remember what went on. You ask people why UG doesn't speak to Legon. We don't remember what went on. We just remember the feeling.
Yeah.
so so it's unfortunate I missed that quarterfinal, but I thought that was one of the hottest streaks I'd seen from people and from you guys. And when I think about the role that you guys played in those three GUDCs, it was just being one of those teams. Like, to be going into those tournaments, being the team that people were scared of, for me, it was quite immense. Let's look at the evolution into African debates. First of all, coming off training with Unity Hall and hearing about these great stories in debates, and now having the opportunity to attend the Pan African Championships in 2015 and then 2016, how would you say the experience was? How different was the terrain, and how did you guys see yourselves adjusting, or facing the challenge that was in Africa?
So you see, the interesting thing is I wasn't even at the 2015 PADC. I wasn't at Pants in 2015
Really?
because no, one was Pants. Was it in 2016 or
There was
2015?
2015 was in Legon, then 2016 I think was in
Was in
Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe, which is the one where I was at. I wasn't in the 2015 one
Oh,
because I think it was probably election related. I think the election was coming up. I was either preparing or, trying to campaign as hard as I could or something. But I wasn't. Yes, that was why. It was because of the elections.
okay.
So I wasn't at the 2015 PADC. I wasn't there. But I hear it was good, and I hear for a lot of people that was really the first time they had the continental experience because very low barrier to entry. Once you qualify, you're in, no tickets, no funding issues. So it was very great for a lot of people. And but unfortunately I wasn't there. In 2016 was also where did we get to in 2016? I don't know if it was we broke definitely, but I'm not sure whether I was quarterfinals or I'm not too sure.
Yeah,
But I
the
think we
quarterfinal.
got kicked out by Oliver's team. I think. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think we got. Yes, I think we got kicked out by Oliver's team, and I remember I was like, I'm using this guy's mixtapes, right? And I have to debase the guy. So what happens? Where do we go from here? It was all, I mean, pretty eye opening and all that. But again, the transition for me was quite smooth. You see, the thing for me is, and it also goes a bit into the kind of person I am. Growing up, we were all over the place. We kept moving, kept moving, kept moving. So after a time, you sort of divorce things from the you sort of lose some kinds of emotions with some things, right? Because one moment you are here, before you can form attachments, you are off to the next place. So it's like I never really get into the emotions of the tournament. I never really get into the space where I'm like, oh, I'm so scared. Like, oh, wow, this is really on the continental level. Like, we are here. I never really, have that kinds of feeling, for better or for worse, but I never really get those feelings. So we went to PADC, and for me, it was just like another training session. It's just like we could just be in any of the classrooms debating like on a Friday night or Saturday morning. It really wasn't that different from a pressure perspective. I just felt, hey, it's just another debate. It's just another important thing to talk about, and it's just some people you need to make the points to. So, in terms of like the immensity or the weight of the moment, I never really had those experiences. But I can understand for some people that's really what drives them, but it just wasn't so for me. So the transition was smooth, and I think if I had gone to the Worlds, it probably would have been the same thing. I would have been in a Wells debate room, and I would have felt I was probably at training or something. So I mean, but for better or for worse, it has its downsides as well. So for me, the transition really wasn't that big of a deal for me. The transition wasn't that big of a deal.
No, I think I totally understand you. I think maybe it also speaks to your style, right? Like just being cool and gentle and calm over on all of these things. But especially if we look at you just attending one PADC and able to make it to the quarterfinal, especially within that era, I think it's something that it tells me that yes, it's something that you took it really cool and calmly. And who knows, probably if you had then built on that experience to go to the next one, the possibilities were immense. But I just want to start crystallizing some of the things and start filling in some of the gaps within the story in here, because you do mention your election year. So we saw one of the biggest flagship campaigns for SRC president in KNUST, which was off the back of, like you said, uh, a stellar campaign, which was won by the previous president, Boachinya Ameche Isaac, who was also within debate. So we started to see the trend of debaters competing for these things, and then also internal rivalry between debaters. I've forgotten who you were competing with at that time. If I'm being honest, yeah, I think SAC.
It was sack,
So
yes.
yes. So can you now put into perspective um, the rivalry which existed within debate and looking at the trajectory of all of these debaters and now that being represented at the school level, and tell me what then informed your decision to run for the presidency, how you saw that journey and how you also saw the outcome. That's a
Well,
packed one.
I mean, yeah, there is a really loaded one. Politically, the debate society itself there was the political rivalry underneath the debate rivalry. So I don't want to get into all the details. I mean, but there's the thing. But there's the whole political rivalry which was going on outside of debate, where you had some groups of people with their own, political sympathies and people with others, and then that would sometimes spill over into debate, and have its own life within the debate thing itself. So when you ask about rivalries, I think I would keep looking at it from two perspectives. So because you see, um, Isaac, for example, ran in the first year with against Sack, and Isaac won. But within that same election cycle, you had debaters supporting different candidates on the political side. But no matter how you may want to avoid it, those rivalries spill over into the debate. For example, if you have a debate tournament and then you would want Isaac to win because I was supporting him and I felt his win could have some political capital, you know, for the election. There's Sak who is also running for the election and who, I mean, people who support him would want him to also win because it could have political capital for the election. So there's the debate rivalry of one person beating the other. Then there's also the political, angle of what you could do with that win outside the debate environment. So that sort of spiced things up and made things quite competitive. So in my own case, getting to the elections, yes, I was in debate because I loved it, but I could also see how wins in debate could also benefit the campaign itself. So in 2015, when I was Ghana's best public speaker, I felt it was a good thing to have. But then my team also had different plans for the win, right? Because I suspect, I'm not too sure, but I suspect there was a whole flyer, I think. I think there was a flyer. I think there was a flyer about the win and everything. So that could have its own thing. And then when Duke ran, maybe some years before, he had also won a public speaking thing at PADC 2014 or so, or 2013, and that had also given him some political capital. So those two things um, were things that you always had to look out for. But the debate skills also were things that I really used in the campaign, because in the campaign, I was more or less like the smart candidate, the nice guy with some nice speeches, good things to say, smart answers to everything and all that, which largely I would credit to debate, because I mean I could speak well, but there's a way in which debate also fine tunes the whole thing. So that was something that was really beneficial in the campaign, and it led to some really serious changes in how elections are done. I think even up till now, it has significantly affected how people run elections, the kind of messaging and how they present themselves and all those things. So I felt the rivalry was on two levels, politically and also from a debate perspective, and that made things sometimes more tense than it had to be.
If you could describe it that way. So I think what I remember from that campaign was the blue tie. Anyone who knows Joseph Mireku knows about that blue tie. And after that, every kid wanted to wear a blue tie. um,
Yeah, or some tie.
or, or some sort of tie. So I think it was one of the more remarkable things. But you do allude to the fact that there, of course, could be a benefit from you winning within debates and the impact on your political career. This is a quick straight question. Do you think the 2015, given the margins in the SRC presidential elections later, do you think that 2015 GDC final results had an impact on it? I'm just curious as to the extent to which you think this had an influence on the outcome of the elections, given how slim it was.
No, 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 no. I don't think it had. I don't think it had any significant impact. No. I think it's just because my campaign team had noticed. I mean that I sounded smart. I could sound smart. I had some really smart ideas. So they felt. I mean, it's easier to sell something that people can already relate with, and so at any point, if they could have a break of, if I mean whatever break they could find to keep building that image was something that was welcome to them. So it would have been, another couple of breaks for them to keep building that image. So I mean they would have used it for whatever purpose they wanted to. But losing also, I mean, politically didn't mean much to me, because I mean the public speaking thing was there anyway. So I mean, so I don't think that really made much of a difference in that sense. But um, Sack was running for the second time.
Yeah.
So there were so many other things at play. He was running for the second time, so there were a number of things. But I feel if we're probably all running for the first time, then it would come down to those kinds of things that. But I don't think largely it had any impact on it, especially
Mm,
because of the fact that the image was there and they just wanted to build it up, make it more shiny. But I don't think that really affected it. No.
yeah. Well, no, that's a good one. I definitely had to ask because I think it's an oddity that the both of you found yourself particularly in that final, and I think it's something that I'd definitely heard around a lot in terms of how it put the two of you together, because I think the claim then was that you obviously were the smart candidate, and if there was proof then that there was another candidate, especially within that space, who could have that advantage, then it gave them the upper hand in that instance. But I want us to go into the campaign itself. Like I said, it was one of the most historic campaigns, especially in terms of the branding and how you were positioned as a candidate. And you already allude to the fact that debates became a crucial thing that you used in being able to enhance your profile as a candidate within that election. But what would you say are some of the stories behind that campaign? Some of the thinking and ideas that went into it. Interesting stories which you definitely love to share with us, because I do know of love stories which come out of KNST elections, and especially around that time, since we were not in the age of social media, I do not hear some of these things. But I want you yourself to volunteer some of these stories to us. Um, they could be good ones, they could be funny ones, they could be bad ones. Yeah, just
Yeah,
share.
yeah, 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 yeah. Oh no, I mean there are so many stories, but I mean I'm still thinking if there are some I should share because of the people involved and all that. But there was, well, around selecting a running mate, right? There was this thing where we um I mean, trying to select the right person for a running mate. So there was this guy who was also running. I won't mention the name, which we were strongly looking at. So we would go and then we would, try to convince him. We would run the models, how the numbers look like, how we think it works this way, da da da. And he'll be like, okay, he will try to think about it, and then there was also like the elements too about how we think. I mean, not I think, but there were people on the team who had this religious interpretation of things, and they would say, oh, religiously, spiritually, they think that it works this way and it's better that way. Then this guy will be like, okay, he's going to think it over. Then he comes the next day and he's like, okay, well, he also consulted with some guys and they also feel spiritually it doesn't work that way. So it's this whole thing about, instead of just being like, I don't think I can do it. There was all
Yeah,
these excuses of spiritually and all those things. Then I remember there was one time, it got to a point the whole band was so popular and so attractive and all that. So this guy came. He used to be on somebody else's team, but he came to us and he's like, oh, he really loves what we are doing, so he wants to join our team. And we're like, oh, why not? I mean, if you want to join, that's excellent. But because he was quite important in the whole scheme of things, we gave him a white shirt and we gave him a blue tie because those were like the things. So we gave him the white shirt, we gave him the blue tie because, I mean, as a welcome thing to the team, so we could do the campaign rounds. And that was the last time we ever saw him. The guy ran off with our white shirt and our blue tie. So I mean, that's one of the things. Sometimes you want to take advantage of all the things happening and all that. So yeah, those are some of the things that I remember. But overall, I think it really went beyond what we were doing at that moment because, as you said, since that year now, everybody wants to have some kind of a brand thing, something that really sets them apart. And then even from a graphics point of view, even the kinds of graphics we did, and we started this whole thing of putting all the halls and all the colleges logos on the thing because we did this concept of having people dress up in their various like
yes,
their various hall attire and the thing. So we had the engineers wear like the thing with the helmet and all that, and then we took this whole picture where we had all these things, and then you could see that in subsequent times. Now people would do flyers, and then they would put all these logos for every hall and all those things. So I mean, those were some of the things. There was a lot of thinking that went into it, but there was also a lot of dedication because guys like Harvey and BNI and so many people that so many of my friends, personal friends, that's per se, like so many guys, but like there was so much passion and so much dedication, which for me really sets the tone for a lot of things moving forward because it really showed me how people could be dedicated to a thing if they wanted to be part of it. So I mean, maybe we could talk about those things later, trying to start a startup later and all those things, and how those now became the kinds of things I looked for, whether people would always be willing to like put themselves on the line for the cause. So it was an interesting time, very interesting 1 year, which yeah, with a lot of things, I mean, there were things selling. I had to sell my laptop actually
Wow.
to yeah, to sort of fund the campaign, because my brother had given me a fresh laptop. And then one day we were like, Charlie, we really need money for this election. Then this laptop is not doing much because I'm not studying much anyway. So we had to sell the laptop, get some money to fund the campaign, and there were things, there were things.
I mean, it's crazy. Like in hindsight, when you think about it as student elections, and you think about the sacrifices that you had to make. Well, I remember the name. It was the Come Along campaign. That's the
Yes,
flyer
come
with,
along.
yeah, with the different people on. But when you think about all of the sacrifices that you had to make, especially as students, um, like you said, like personal financing decisions, time constraints. I know you still came out with very, very, very good grades. I'll not, maybe, I'm sure you'd like to still play it down and say, "Hey, I could have done better." But there was a very, it's not sweet. It's a very, very sad and unfortunate story about where you graduated. I think, if I'm wrong, please correct me. I think it was just a few points off the mark in
I think
order
it
to
was
get
like
in.
point 0.4, like 0.4 or something.
Yeah, how did that make you feel, especially in light of all of the experiences which you had gathered around campus, and still your determination to still get to that point?
Yeah, I mean, I always say when I went to the uni, my goal was it was just to get a first class. That was really the goal, nothing else, nothing else. But along the way, I had to do those other things. But it was for me, it was really painful. It was really painful because I thought I could I could do it, and I actually could have really.
Mm,
But I mean, things happen, and then things go the way that they went. I remember my first time traveling outside was because my brother had promised if I could reach a certain academic milestone, then he would reward me with like an European tour. So I hit the milestone. I think went to about 4 countries. It was really nice. So I was really looking forward to just continuing that whole thing, and grabbing the first class and all that. But it couldn't happen, unfortunately. But I won't blame it on any of the things, because I feel I still could have gotten it and still done all the things that I did. It
mm,
was, I think we would just put it down to being unable to do it. Because if I really had put myself to it, I could have done all those things. But it
mm,
also speaks to how there are some things. I mean, you just can't change. You just can't change the past. Once
mm,
it's done, it's done. Like, sometimes people feel like there's a second chance, and there's, yeah, that's true. But when things are done, they are done. So I've done a master's. It was with a distinction, but I don't
mm,
call
mm.
that can't be the second chance. Like, once it's done, it's done. So we need to also rethink how things are done. It's just like debates. Like, you can't review a decision. I don't know how the laws are now, but when we were there, you can't review a decision. Can you review the decisions now?
No, no, no VAR.
Yeah. So that's just, I mean, there's no second chance. If you are second, if you are fourth, that's it. So it really speaks to how things, you can't undo things. And for some of the young people who will be watching, if they feel there's something that they need to do or they have to do, they should actually just go ahead and do those things, because like there's no second chance or redemption. I mean, redemption is always the plan B. It won't be as good as it could have been. So I mean, if there's something to do, you just need to do those. So I feel I could have done it better, and I should have done it better, but I mean, it is what it is. But for those who are still in the positions where they can make things better, I think they really need to do what they have to do.
Yeah, I think it's really important advice. We're always much more willing to sell the option B, instead of just using the opportunity to still remind people that whilst they are in it, they can make a difference. But I still think, I still think, if we you look at the trajectory of your life, you'd say, if this was to be viewed as a sacrifice, maybe it definitely was an important sacrifice in the grand scheme of things. And I want to use that as a segue to get into what you're doing now, because you tell me you're into politics now and running a couple of your things. But between that period of doing a lot of things within Kenya, is to being able to solidify your brand, being able to generally become a household name. And I know with Kenya, even if you lose the main election, there's still a lot to gain in terms of just the exposure that it gives you. But what are some of the things that you've then had the opportunity to enter or engage in, up to the point at which you are now, and how has the journey been, and how has your time within debates just helped you to access that space and also be able to thrive within that space?
I think the thing about debating was just the mindset, the thinking. I mean, being a quick thinker, thinking on your feet, having this really broad view of things, you know, wide, like, I mean, I know people in debates know all kinds of things that their mates would probably, have no idea about. I mean, there are people who may still think like the Israeli state now is like the Israel of the Bible, but there's nobody in debate who really thinks that. These are things they ordinarily wouldn't have been interested in, but then they have to be interested in those kinds of things. So I think that they may underrate the value now, but they will definitely see what it is, because in my current line of work, there's a lot of international stuff, there's a lot of development related stuff, in there. And conversations move so quickly, because sometimes you're in a room, it's a really high level room, and there's talk about all kinds of things, right? All kinds of things like international relations stuff, there's stuff about, there's digital stuff, there's media, like there's information that, or there are topics that you wouldn't ordinarily read on, but you find that they are relevant to you in the space, and you could offer some two bits, you could say something small, which just shows what's happening. So, I mean, that thing, it's totally underrated. But there's also the other side of debate, which is in a lot of the things that you do, people struggle for certificates. Like they want some evidence of the work they've done, right? So if there's somebody in some club or something, they want some certificates that shows, oh yeah, this guy was a member of this society or this group, things like that. For me, debate is the one thing that you never really have to show those things, because the evidence of those things are self-evident when people interact with you. So I don't think I've ever told anybody at work that I was in debate or anything, but naturally it comes up. They naturally feel like, have you had some training along these lines? It just comes up. So you don't need to see any paperwork to believe it. It just comes up. So that's like how real the skills are and how useful they've been. I've worked in rural areas where I've had to train people in, entrepreneurship, how to start businesses, how to do marketing, how to do stuff like that. And they didn't have to train me to do those things. They just need to give me the material and for me to know this is what we have to do. And I'm able to, engage huge crowds, different kinds of people, all kinds of ages, really old markets women, some illiterate, then young people, people in vocational schools across board, right? But if you've been in rooms and you've had to speak to different, like people of different persuasions, young people, old people, atheists, and all that, and try to convince atheists about God, and like there's just a way that it prepares you to engage with all kinds of people. So that for me has been very useful, has been a very useful thing. And then in mankind's work too, there's a lot of public policy involved, and you realize that a lot of the concepts are things from debates, like processes versus outcomes and all. You find, I mean, there are different names for those things, but the strands of thinking are almost the same. How do you balance two kinds of things, right? Do you want foreign investors just coming into the country, with the capital that you need, or you also want to make sure there's like a nascent domestic industry that's protected? How do you balance these two things, and what are the kinds of approaches? There may be things you can say in the debate room, on the spot, but like now you need to think through them. And unlike in the debate room where you can just say, hey, I mean, fuck all, I mean, pardon my language, but away with all these domestic companies bringing the foreign capital. In the real world, you can't have those kinds of blanket hard positions. You need to really balance things. So for me, it's been really impactful. Then I see the evidence of it all the time, that it's a really useful thing to do.
Y- Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons why we host this podcast, because I think debate has got to the point where we're beginning to see a lot of harvest from the seeds that were sown over the years. So we need to keep on getting the word out of there. I, I had an experience one time where we went to a radio station to speak about debate, and they were like, we are only doing talking, talking, talking. We need to show evidence. Like, so if we don't show evidence, we go explain tire. And I think
Yeah.
when we tell people now, like I always tell people, like nobody has ever done debate and said, I regret doing it. No matter what, the person almost always finds it at the centerpiece of their lives and the things that they're doing into the future. I want to I want to ask like I want to begin to ask like my last possible set of questions. One, I know you speak about just having the ability to speak to different crowds, and I know you have a huge Twitter presence where you definitely interact with a lot of people. Where do you say this angle began from? Where did you get the idea from to start interaction in this way? And how have you found, especially as a debater and on an intellectual level, how have you found existing within that space and just being able to thrive in there?
It's been frustrating, absolutely frustrating, absolutely frustrating. It's frustrating. I won't lie to you. Mainly because there's a way in which debate conditions you to think that everybody else thinks like
Yes.
you. They don't
Yes.
think, what? No, 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 no. I mean, we'll come to that side, but not smart, nothing. But they think like you, right? So things like respecting everybody's view. You feel like
Oh,
it's a baseline where we can start from. So we disagree, but we respect it, and we are about to build on from there. Or like there are some things you debate makes you feel everybody agrees.
yes.
How does debate describe the judge? It's like a global
Oh,
citizen, rational global citizen, something.
yeah.
It makes
Average intelligent voter.
Yes, something like average intelligence voter. So it gives you some expectations. So you think, okay, you are speaking to an average intelligence voter, which means there's a bunch of things which are already sorted. I don't need to do that work. But you get, especially on Twitter, you realize those things are not there. You know, it's it's an entirely so sometimes things are as basic as like facts, right? This is a fact. We can disagree on the interpretation of it, which is great, but like this is the fact. Either people don't know, or they don't care to know, or they don't believe it, or so it makes it very difficult. So that has been a very frustrating thing. But the other frustrating thing for me personally is because of the kind of life I led in Care University. And because when you run an election, you don't know all the kinds of people that may have helped you in ways you don't even know. Because there are people
Mhm.
who I don't know who knocked on doors for me. They probably shared my cards. They probably, retweeted my stuff. They probably told their friends to vote for me. So when you've had that kind of thing, and now you're on a platform like Twitter where you interact with all kinds of people, you're so careful not to. not to insult anybody, right? Because it's not, the insult itself doesn't bother me because I feel like some people deserve to be told that they are fools or they are stupid. But it's like, okay, if this guy sacrificed their time to do some work for you because they believed in what you were doing at the time, and now this is the kind of thing you have to tell them, so it makes it quite difficult. So I just sort of, treat everybody well with respect and all that. Generally you should treat everybody with respect, but I feel like personally for me there's that much of a bigger burden because you don't want to sort of insult the person who had
Yeah.
previously sacrificed some time for you or some energy or something to sort of push your message. So for me that makes it even much more frustrating. But the other thing too is there are people who may have known you from uni and all that, and then they feel because maybe they knew you from afar or something, it gives them the license to sort of say, "Oh, this guy, we know him. There's that. I mean, we know him. We know who he is. He had nothing. So, like he's nothing. Don't listen to him. There's nothing going on." So there's the frustration is on quite a number of levels. But that aside, I think it's been very good because for all those problems I mentioned, people actually appreciate a good point to a large extent. People appreciate a good point. People can appreciate a good argument when they see it. So, when they see that, okay, yeah, this is actually a good thing, people can identify that as a good thing. But there are also scenarios where people have their own biases, their own colored lenses on how they see things. So no matter what you say, no matter how you frame it, no matter how well reasoned it is, I mean, you have the insults and all that. But also for me, because of all these, I think four things I've said, there's also a certain joy that comes because sometimes the absence of a reasoned critique for me is evidence of the fact that there's actually no reasoned critique to it. Because why would you type a whole paragraph of insults when you could actually have a paragraph of actual responses to the thing? So for me, that also like gives me some kind of joy that the more caustic and insulting responses you get sometimes is an indication of the fact that there's actually no proper response to what you are saying. Otherwise, why would you insult me if you
Yeah.
in the same in that same with that same energy you can say something that actually engages the thing. So these are some of the things, but I actually never set out to build a social media following or anything. It was just sharing my thoughts, saying what I want to say, and then with time it sort of gained some traction. So sometimes I've had people call me and then they say, "Oh, why are you saying all these things? I'm so disappointed. You shouldn't be saying these things because you are this person and I hold you in high esteem in this way. So why are you doing that?" And then when people call me like that, it's disheartening for me because what I say is you probably like my content because you like how it's been framed and how it's been reasoned and what I say. Like that's why. And that's the same thing I'm doing now. The only issue is that now you disagree with the conclusions, right? You disagree with the things now. Like I could say things that will make you happy, but I just don't believe those things. I just don't believe those things. So that's how come you don't hear those things. So it's unfortunate you are disappointed and all that, but I'm just doing what you like me for. Just that now you don't like the content, but I'm doing what you've always liked from day one. So that's how it has been. That's how it has been.
Uh, no, I think I find it very very interesting, especially because these things you see it happen, but then when it happens to someone that you know, and then you see those interactions, you can almost see it with that view or that lens and say, "Oh, he's taking a piss at them," and it, it can be amusing or entertaining to a certain degree. I think those people you initially described, they are called agenda boys on Twitter, who carry their own agenda and won't listen. But I think one thing I like from your submission is just staying consistent with them, realizing that, see, like, good argumentation eventually wins. I think for me, it's one of the reasons that I believe everyone should be a debater, because then we can have that uh, fundamental thing set out for everyone. Cool. I also just wanted to ask you, because uh, Andrews asked me to ask you this question. Since there was a since there was a time you were training, because you had a coaching career, right, where you came around to train um,
Yeah,
some of this, and he's saying that you made him do 10 Ironman OGs at GEDC 2019 camp just to stop him and Bannerman from shafting. Because apparently, but I remember the reason this is crazy for me is because you used to do the same thing. I think there was this debate about hymen reconstruction in training for GDC 2015, where you and Belinda came in to describe hymen reconstruction as redeveloping the, is it the West Berlin Wall or something like that,
yeah.
putting up a wall in Berlin. But anyway, away from that, he says you made him do 10 Ironman rounds. Is this, do you remember this allegation, and is it true? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I think I sort of remember, but for different reasons. I don't think it was to prevent anybody from shafting anybody. I don't think it
Yeah.
was
Oh,
to prevent the shafting. I don't think so. But I
apparently
think
they were
Andrews would.
shafting CG, and then you
Pardon?
wanted to apparently they were shafting so much in CG, so you put them in OG and asked them to do it about 10 times.
Yes, but you see, it's for different things. It wasn't so much as a shaft. It wasn't so much as the shaft, but as the thinking. The thinking of you having to be the one to go first and not having to attack a thing. Because personally, for me, the way my mind works, it's always easier for me to attack a thing than to come up with a thing. So it really
Mm.
was about the thinking, you having to come up with your own things rather than you disagreeing with somebody else's. But I don't remember the other reason. I suspect there was a particular thing I wanted to do with Andrews himself, either with either because I probably wasn't happy with his openings or something. But I think it paid off. I think it paid
Yeah,
off, and he will agree it paid off.
he's one of the best prime ministers now in Africa, but 10 times.
Yes, definitely. But because they had to get the point, I think it was something about the reasoning, and I think the two of them had also gotten comfortable in a certain sense of they trying to
Yeah,
feed off each other's vibe and each other's energy, which I felt was good in a certain sense, but also had to be also I had to be spotlighted and handled in a way that would be beneficial to both of them. Because sometimes the comfort leads to some outcomes you may not really like. So I think that was probably why I did that. But once you can attest it has paid off, then that's a good thing.
yeah. I mean, the fact that he remembers probably means that means that it paid off. So just wrapping up with the debate questions here. One of the things we like to find out is uh, who was your most dangerous opponent during your speaking career, or like, I don't want to say most feared speaker, because you tell me that you do not fear any speaker, but who did you dislike going up against the most, and who would you say was your best speaker around the time you debated?
Okay. So I like how you frame it because it was fear. I mean, there was no fear, but with how you frame it, but you see again, if the guy speaks before me, I'm not too concerned, right? If the guy speaks before me, at that point there's no concern. But my concerns were when these people speak after me, right? At the beginning, I don't think you were one of those guys at the beginning, but eventually you became one of those guys. And then Abu Rasta, what's his name? I don't even know his name. Abu
Prince.
Rasta was also Prince was one of those guys. You don't want that guy speaking after you because there's a way in which he makes everything seem very different from how it originally had to be. So I didn't like Prince speaking after me at all. Telfa, I didn't like Telfa speaking after me also for similar reasons. Oh yes, this guy too, um, Karim,
Oh,
Karim also wasn't the kind of person you would want to speak after. But I think BNI would be that kind of person, but I don't really have memories of that. I don't know
mm,
if it was because I was really the kind of calendar debater. Like I do the calendar things and I'm off. All those times where you guys are in Nigeria and doing all those things. I'm usually not there, so I'm not sure if that's why I don't have a lot of BNI memories. But I suspect he would be that kind of person. But just I don't have any memories of that happening. And he may say it's probably because we are not in the same rooms, but that's definitely not why. So yeah, these are some of the names that I mean when they speak before me, it's fine. But if they have to speak after me, there's always a high level of discomfort because there are things that they would try to do.
yeah, I think there was the time within the debate space. It was like the battle of who has the last word, and it was uh, who would rather be in CEO versus battle of the whips. And I think it was very interesting because whips were in such an interesting position before that 2013 2014 generation. Then all of a sudden, like people came in and they were like, "Oh, we wanted to be whip, like we wanted to do exclusively whip because of how like it had been branded over the years." Cool. And I think there was a last question that I wanted to um uh ask. It just keeps skipping my mind, but I think it was around what happened to your rap career. Because do you remember you used to? Do you remember you used to after our trainings in the evenings, we used to gather around. It was around 2 a.m. From the Kunti JCR. Then before all of us spread and go, he had some bars he used to give us.
Yeah. I mean, not just the rap bars, but there was a lot of creative thinking stuff we used to do. I
Yeah,
think somewhere like Yo Mames, and
eh,
things like there were things we would do even at tournaments, things that were along those lines. Unfortunately, the rap career never took off. But I released a song in high school, though. There was a song, star-studded
yeah,
song I released in high school, and then there was also a rap cipher which I did in high school. But in uni, it never really took off. I don't know
materialized.
why. Maybe I should have. I don't know. But it never really took off.
If only you had focused on that.
Yeah. Even.
All right, last question before I give you the platform to give us your final take. Um, I'm sure you are not, maybe even if you're not too much within the debate space, I'm sure you've begun to hear of the exploits that some of our people are beginning to do. I think way even started from 2018, where we now West Africa won the first PADC till just at the last Worlds in Madrid, where we had, can you imagine? We had African universities going on stage for a WDC final. They were in the ESL final. Looking at all of these accomplishments happening within the space and against the backdrop of when you began debates, like you said, just looking at the top and trying to get to that level, what would your comments be? What would you say of this? Is this something that you saw coming? How can we continually improve on this? And what would be your message to those still in the space now?
Frankly, I never saw it coming, and I also didn't see it coming in so short a time because and it will be hard for these guys to understand. But like it was actually like the gap was so wide. It was so wide. Last time I was on you guys, I was on Dio Post, and I was like, I don't know if you guys yourself can actually appreciate what you guys have done, but this, it wasn't even a dream. It was like a thing. It was like something happening on this other planet that, like had nothing to do with you really. Like, because you felt by the time you're out of uni, like you wouldn't reach there. Like, it really seemed like the impossible, really. So for me, I didn't see it coming in so short a time. I felt it would take so long. There would be, so many things. There would be a while, it would take some time, then PADC, and then some years, and then later, somewhere in the, not somewhere in the really undefined future, we can have these things happening. But then it happened in so short a time. And I think that really goes to show how seriously these guys have taken the sport and how well they are doing what they've decided to do. So it's been absolutely amazing. And I think that so now um so now, like, their dreams are different, right? Their dreams are different because now their dreams won't be to break at Worlds. Like,
Mm,
that's not the kind of dream they have now. Now their dream is to actually win Worlds and to do whatever they want to do. Those are the kind of dreams now. And for me, I feel that's always the major thing to look at, not just in debates, but ensuring that people have better dreams than you did. Like,
mm,
that's for me, that's really it. For people to have different kinds of dreams and better dreams than you had, that's really is the ultimate thing that you could do. So if you, for example, won the PADC, and all of a sudden, I'm sure every first year debater feels like, I can do this.
yeah.
Like, I see this guy in training, he's done it. So I mean, why not? I can do it. And also the kind of access it gives to them, because now they don't need to get on a flight to speak to a PADC winner. Like, they can meet the guy at training, or they know
Mm,
so many people who can, or they have PADC winners speaking to them at training. And I feel like these are the kinds of things that eventually build the sport. I mean, we can talk about funding, we can talk about some kinds of inequities, some kinds of discriminations here and there. But I think that ultimately seeing people like you do the things makes it easier, and it makes people dream better than you probably did. So that for me is an immense thing, which they don't need to. I mean, you personally, and also on a group level, you do not need to water down what those achievements have been. They've been really serious milestones for the community, and we need to talk more about those kinds of things.
mm. Yeah, I think it's really impressive. It's one of the reasons why we thought we needed to create this platform to start getting the message out. Because from the perspective of the world, this is a budding, emerging society that we need to take care of. But we need them to understand that there's a place where we came from, and that the potential was always there. It was just that the world hadn't seen the potential, and it's them seeing it now. So I do believe that there's still a long way to go. I think it's been so great chatting with you personally. Like, I think it's been such a long time since we even got in touch. I just want
Yeah.
to give you, yeah, this last minute, also to share your thoughts. It could be anything you're working on that you want to promote, your philosophy, ideals, advice that you want to share with the next generation. Shout outs to your friends, anyone. You have the floor.
Sure. I think I'll keep it really simple. Um, I spoke about it earlier, which was about just seizing the moments, doing the things, really doing the things that you need to do, because it may seem like you have all the time and there'll always be a second chance, and there's this and you do it later and all those things, but like, these really are the moments. So for whatever they are doing, those in school, those starting a new project, those trying to maybe build a company, trying to do a scholarship, I don't know, whatever that it is, like, you can actually do those things, but you just need to focus and get them done. Like, there's not going to be a next good time to do it, right? Like, those things need to be done now. Like, that's how permanent things are. Like, the time goes and there's really nothing you can do about it. So, like, we really need to seize the times and the opportunities they have now, and to get those things that they want to do. But the other thing too will be I mean, and it's strange to hear it because I just spoke about seizing the opportunity. But the other thing is to also be really flexible in your thinking and in your approach to things.
Yeah.
Just take it easy, try to have a good time, try to do the best that you can, and things just fall into place. Really, things just fall into place. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really really good advice. For me, like I think the highlight is like what you said. There are some things which need to happen now, and whilst they are there, you need to give it your dedication, your efforts, and make sure that it happens whilst you're still on it. Charlie, thank you so much for speaking to us and for sharing your time with us, especially on a Sunday. We know you could be eating fufu by now or enjoying a nice football game, but we really appreciate you taking your time and speaking to us. Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This was the episode of The Shaft with myself as your host, Erasmus. Really good conversation. Once again, please like and subscribe to the channel. I think we are very close to hitting most of our targets, and we need your support in here in terms of your subscriptions and also your likes and then your comments, and keep on sharing these with your friends. Bye bye.